Hey everybody, it is Goose, and you are watching On With the Show. Thank you so much for coming back to the podcast today. We're going to this is going to be one of those shows where I got a couple of things I need to talk about before our main topic for today, because there's some things that have been going on in the entertainment world, sports world that need to be kind of closed out. We're going to talk about Kyle Busch because we found out his cause of death just recently. Found out some things about the recent passing on Darrel Sheets from Storage Wars, and our main topic today is going to be an interesting story coming to us from actor Ted McGinley and a couple of other actors regarding their residuals from some of their more famous shows. So let me switch over to the OBS. We're going to get into this and we're going to get on with the show. So let's start off with the news from Kyle Busch that we come to find out Kyle Busch had pneumonia for days, 2 weeks before death. This is the very sad thing. I reported on the sudden passing of Kyle Busch and how it's just shocking how his passing had become. He had talked about um, I guess what you would basically think is a sinus infection because was complaining about his sinuses 2 weeks prior to his passing. It says here this is from actually the headlines from ESPN. Like I said, Kyle Busch had pneumonia for days to weeks before death. This is written on the 28th by who's it written by? It doesn't say here. It's written by. But it says there from Charlotte, North Carolina, Kyle Busch died last week from hemorrhagic shock and disseminated intravascular coagulation after complications from bacterial pneumonia led to sepsis, according to the former NASCAR driver's death certificate. Busch has been experiencing symptoms of bacterial pneumonia for days to weeks before sepsis set in, according to the certificate obtained by the Associated Press in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. The manner of death was listed as natural. The death certificate also said Busch, who was 41, was cremated in Mooresville, North Carolina, following an autopsy. His family announced Busch died or passed away after severe pneumonia progressed into sepsis, resulting in rapid and overwhelming complications. Sepsis is considered a life-threatening medical emergency that occurs when the body has an extreme overreactive response to an infection, causing the immune system to damage its own tissues and organs. I can relate to this because I had sepsis. Uh, Going back to last year, I was starting to get some chest pains, and I knew what those chest pains were. I knew that I was having a heart issue because I'd had it before. I already had one stent in my heart. I'd gone to the hospital and looking at my medical history, they're like, "We're going to send you upstairs," and sure enough, they found an artery that was pretty much completely closed, and so they put a new stent in there, which they used, ran the thing up my leg and the heart, and they opened it up, and of course they were very concerned about infection, and they said, if you feel anything, if it feels sore, come right back. I didn't. They told me to relax and take it easy for 2 weeks, which I did, but 2 weeks later I had a massive um, growth. I want to say growth. I had this. All I could explain is this: I had a massive infection on my leg that wasn't at, but it was near the point of where they put the thing in for my heart, and and I tried to take care of it myself, realizing I couldn't. Of course, when I went in a couple days later, and I wasn't feeling myself. I was tired. I wasn't hungry. I didn't want to take a shower. I didn't want to do anything. I knew for me personally that wasn't right. Went to the hospital, went to the emergency room. They looked at it. They said they saw this giant abscess on my right leg. In fact, it was so high up, it was almost near my groin area. And they said, "Mr. Scott, it's a good thing you came in because you have sepsis, and if you'd waited a few more days, you could have died." That's how serious it was. That's why when it said that here that Kyle Busch said he had sepsis, I was in shock. I was pretty much in shock. But then again, he was suffering from a sinus issue weeks before he passed, and so the idea that he had pneumonia and he was taking stuff for it pretty much told me, oh my gosh, yes, he was a lot sicker than we all thought he was. It says here, typically the immune system releases chemicals to fight off the pathogens like bacteria, viruses, or fungi, but with sepsis, the response goes into overdrive. The results can cause widespread inflammation, form microscopic blood clots, and make blood vessels weak. Busch had been plenty busy leading to the weeks of his death, um, and being a competitive driver, I'm pretty sure he just thought, oh, I've just got a head cold. I just need to get over this, not realizing probably what he really had. And I think that's just as point of reference. I think that if you're feeling like you've been sick or ill longer than you should be, you need to go. My preference is you need to go see a doctor. If you're suffering from something that's like this has been nagging on longer than it should be, you need to go see a doctor. And but not taking anything away from Kyle Busch. I mean, he was a very competitive person, and he probably did not think it was as serious as it was. And unfortunately, he got sepsis and he had passed. And that is the official cause of death. They ruled it a natural death, that he had passed away from severe pneumonia that led to sepsis. Moving on to story number 2, which talks about Storage Wars alum Darrel Sheets. This is from Us Weekly. Darrel Sheets' autopsy report reveals new details of Storage Wars star's death and toxicology. And I think that this was written by Mike Volpo and Whitney Vasquez on the 27th, which is just a few days ago. It says Darrel Sheets' autopsy report revealed new details about the Storage Wars star's death. The report, exclusively obtained by Us Weekly on May 27th, Wednesday, stated that the toxicology analysis came back negative. I think that's one of the things they were worried about, because he had taken his own life there. I think they were wondering if he suffered from anything that would have triggered a depressive state. Officials took samples of Sheets' blood for toxicology, tested for benzos, cocaine, fentanyl, and other drugs. There were ultimately no drugs found in his system. That's good to know. While examining his body, officials discovered Sheets had tattoos. What they're saying is the ink, however, did not play a role in his death. I think there's a nice picture of him. He was one of my favorites on the show. I like that show, and he was one of my favorites. The body is that of a well-developed, well-nourished adult male. In the final summary, the Mojave County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed Sheets' cause of death as he took his own life. He's known as the Gambler. 2 months ago, us confirmed Sheets had passed from an apparent taking of his life at 67. Upon the arrival, officers located a male suspect who suffered from what appeared to be a self-inflicted wound to the head. The male was pronounced deceased on the scene. So I think that they were basically wondering if there was anything that had caused him to further take his life. Police in Arizona also confirmed they were investigating claims that Sheets was bullied online before his death. In the weeks before his taking of his life, Sheets had confronted alleged cyberbullies on social media. And that was one of the biggest things. I know Renee, one of the other guys on the show, had told many people that Darrel had been suffering from cyberbullies online. That they're basically believing that may have been what had caused him to take his life. He appeared on more than 160 episodes of Storage Wars from 2010 to 2023. He was an auction veteran, becoming known as the Gambler. Um, and it's just one of those. It's one of those things where you hear something like this, and you're just deeply, deeply saddened that um, he would do something like this. But then again, you don't know what's going on in someone's life to to cause this kind of reaction. I find it very sad. I mean, like I said, he was one of my favorites. He actually, if you ever watch the show, he did pretty well. Um, and I think it was always because he was always thought that he could find that one thing that could, you know, make a really good profit. Anyway, we've got that housekeeping out of the way. Today's topic on the show is, I saw this yesterday, and this is from Fox News Entertainment, which talks about Married with Children star Ted McGinley reveals he gets penny residual checks from his hit TV shows. The actor admitted the checks get smaller each year, and he likely has about $2 worth sitting uncashed. This is written by Christina Duggan Ramirez, written yesterday, published yesterday, May 31st. There's the actor. Tim McGinley is the latest celebrity to reveal the shocking amount he still receives from residual checks in a new interview with Page Six, the Married with Children star, who also found fame on Happy Days and The Love Boat. So he has a very long. He also had a very, very big role in the movie Revenge of the Nerds, which is one of my favorite movies of the '80s, which sadly cannot be remade today. Trust me, there's big reasons why Revenge of the Nerds cannot be made today. But said he's still holding on to a whole stack of checks, each worth a total of 1 penny each. I've been getting residuals all the time, said McGinley, who admitted the checks become smaller and smaller as the years go by. While McGinley doesn't bother to cash the small checks, he can't get himself to toss them either. McGinley isn't the only celebrity who has been upfront about the shocking residuals they've received throughout the years. From another story, during her appearance on McBride Rewind, Jodie Sweetin, who earned stardom from her role as Stephanie Tanner on Full House during the show's entire 8-season run from 87 to 95. Then again, the spinoff Fuller House from 2016 to 2020 shared the shocking amount she received from her latest residual check. Sweetin at the time said she got a 1-cent check just the other day. And there she is. That's from her when she first started. There she is today. Very recognized. She's the one who popularized the phrase, "How rude." There's no syndication anymore because it's all in streaming, she continued. Who gets paid for that? Nobody gets paid for that, she said. Sure, in my 20s there would be money, but not reliable. She noted you don't know how much it's going to be or how often, and they're going to run the show. So sometimes you're like, oh, cool, that was nice. And then sometimes you're like, all right, well, there's a nice dinner out. You just kind of don't know. So it's not something you can rely on. Sweet added, I always say that people think I live some extravagant life. I'm like, honey, I drive a 2023 used Hyundai Sonata that I love. I rent my house. I have credit cards that are maxed out. I live a normal life. I think a lot of people are kind of thinking like they think that at least they kind of think in the sense of you're an actor, you must be getting a lot of money. You must be getting a lot of money, which is not always the case. I live a normal life. Yeah, there are moments when you're like, this is going well. And there are times when you're like, I need a day job. Then it goes to another start. In 2025, former Nickelodeon star Drake Bell addressed what he said was the misconception of the entertainment world. He said, that's the perception the world perception of the world. It's always been this way. It's like, oh, you made a Folgers coffee commercial. You must live in a mansion in Hollywood. I saw you on TV. You're rich. Bill said in an appearance on an Unplanned podcast. That's far from the case. And especially, which is the bummer for most of us on Nickelodeon, we don't get residuals for our shows. So think about all those shows. He was on Drake and Josh. He was on the Amanda Show, Amanda Bynes, iCarly, all these crazy shows. Bell noted that most networks pay actors residuals for work used after its initial run, but said Nickelodeon only offers a one-time payment to actors. So it looks like, he pretty much says that for all the shows that they did on Nickelodeon that I think are still being played, in some cases for Nickelodeon, he's not getting residuals. He's not getting residuals for all that stuff that he did. And he's basically saying that none of them are pretty much getting, Jeanette McCurdy and, Josh Peck and, who's the girl that played Carly? Can't remember off the top of my head all of a sudden. But they didn't get, they're not getting residuals for these shows. They got one-time thing and one-time check, and that's it. And Jodie Sweetin says something over here too. It's like, it's all on stream. There's no syndication anymore. It's all streaming, which it is. It's all streaming nowadays. And so who gets paid for that? Nobody gets paid for that. None of the actors, I don't think, really get paid for that, for all the streaming that's going on. I think it's all the studios that are getting paid for that. I'm going to close out the OBS. I'm going to give my opinion of this on the other side, because I do think it's kind of telling that the state of residuals is changing. And I'll give a little history lesson about how residuals kind of happen. But let me close this out, and I'll talk to you on the other side. All right, so what necessarily are residuals? Well, residuals are pretty much something that you get paid for continually for the work that you've done in the entertainment business. In other words, your work kind of lives on. It's like that with film. A lot of actors, pretty much what they do is they know if they believe that their project's going to be a blockbuster, they might forego a certain amount of upfront money to get what's known as back end money. In other words, what am I going to get paid, when the movie gets released, and what is it be like when it gets over, on for television rights and streaming rights. There are some actors that will put themselves out there for what's known as back end money. And in fact, there's some actors who are like, they won't even get paid for the work they do. They'll take it all on what is known as the back end, all on the profits, all on the gross, all on everything else. What's happening though in television is kind of changing. And because a lot of shows, I think right now, a lot of things are being streamed, whether it's being directly streamed, like, Only Murders in the Building. That is a Hulu Presents thing. And the interesting part is that if you notice in the credits, I don't know if anybody actually watches the credits, but you'll notice that the stars themselves, Steve Martin Short, Selena Gomez, they're all executive producers. Being an executive producer means you put your own money into it, and you're one of the first to get your money back. And so a lot of stars will do that. They'll build a reputation where they get producer roles as well as anything else, because they get paid more money to be producers. And not only that, it also helps in the longer run with also residuals when it goes to residuals and streaming and all that other fun stuff. In the early days, it wasn't like that. If you were to ask, if you were to go back in time and like the Three Stooges. The Three Stooges pretty much did not get paid more than whatever it was they were being paid at the time they were filming all of their shorts, all of their comedy shorts. Um, a lot of times the you know, you weren't sure how all this was going to play itself out in the early parts of film and television. I do know that there were some, like Lucille Ball, when she was the head of her studio, which was crazy because women weren't the heads of anything, back in the day of early television. But she was smart enough for her and Desi Arnaz to be the heads of their studio, which means they had more power and they made more money that way. It's not like that now, and I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of stars will figure out they want to figure out more ways of how they're going to be able to earn an income when they get older, rather than trying to be, I mean, it's funny. It's like I just finished watching the show Fubar on Netflix, which I love. I love the show Fubar. I'm a big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, and I think the idea that he's still doing these kind of action, shows, movies. He's still doing this kind of action stuff, but he's not like the guy that's doing all of the action. It's like all of a sudden more of the action is being portrayed by a lot of the younger actors. But he's also an executive producer, which means he can be able to make money on the product and not feel like he's the sole responsibility of behind, in front of the camera and making it all work. A lot of actors and actresses today are now trying to figure out ways how they can make money on the back end, how they can make money behind the camera. I think it wasn't that long ago where Mark Wahlberg has talked about how he was going to start taking a step back from acting and do more producing, because being able to make more and more money as a producer rather than an actor, and which is kind of smart because in some ways you can be a producer in multiple projects rather than having to be an actor in multiple projects, because one doesn't take as much time as the other one does. As I scratch my head, but the idea of residuals now is just almost becoming a joke. And I think it's sad because a lot of these actors, from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, are now realizing that they're not going to be making a whole lot of money because the game has changed, especially for television. Shows that, you would want to be able to, shows that if I wanted to watch the Love Boat, because they brought up the Love Boat that Tim McGinley was on. If I wanted to watch the Love Boat, I would have to go find it on streaming. And the contracts for streaming now are so different than they were back when they were having sitcoms for residuals. And the pay structures have all changed. It's kind of one of the reasons why I think that some actors, have moved. Instead of going back and doing these big blockbuster films, they're now looking to do things more of a more intimate nature through Netflix and Hulu and Prime. They're not having to. They know that it would be easier for them to find an audience on streaming than it would be, to when their movie opens. And there are a lot of good movies opening this summer. So, the theater industry is not dead, but they're having to rewrite the rules and figure out new things for our entertainment purposes and what it is before. And unfortunately, some of these actors and actors, matter of fact, I think I read an article about a year or so ago where Emmy or Oscar nominated actor Diamond who's been in Shazam, and he's been in Guardians of the Galaxy. He's got a long history of being one of these great actors, and he's not making as much money as everybody else. He has these great roles, and he's a great actor, and you would think that he's making millions of dollars, and apparently he's making like the minimum, because they spent all of their budget money on everybody else, and they come to him and they're like, okay, well, how much? Oh, we're sorry, we don't have a whole lot left. We can pay you this. It's kind of sad, of how some of these actors and actresses are just trying to scrape by. A lot of them are having to leave the industry to go into what do we call a regular job. It's like, yeah, I once did this great show, and now I'm here. I'm the teller at your bank now. It's like it's kind of crazy. It's kind of sad, but that's the way Hollywood is. It's very fickle, and I think that only this. I don't want to sit there and make this sound really bad, but it's like almost like because I think it's just the rules have changed. As the entertainment industry has changed, so have all the other rules have changed. And just because Ted McGinley was on 3 of the biggest shows in television history, which is The Love Boat, Happy Days, and Married with Children, doesn't mean he's flush with money. I'm sure he's doing very well. I'm sure that he's figuring out ways to be able to stay active and to make enough income to live on. But he's not making he's basically saying, hey, I'm getting this residual check for a penny. A penny. And, that's basically what I'm making for all these great shows that, I did back in the day. The game has changed. And, and unfortunately, you're gonna have to be smart about how it's all gonna work. All right, that's enough for me on this topic for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, go down, subscribe to the channel, bang the bell for notifications, bang the bell for notifications, so you always know when new videos are uploaded to YouTube. New podcasts are uploaded to YouTube. Give me a big like on the videos. It does help me with the algorithm, and just tell me that these are the kind of topics you want to hear. Share this out to your friends, family, and neighbors. Let them know what I'm doing on over here and on with the show. And do me a favor, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know, hey, has the game changed so drastically in Hollywood that you can't make a decent living anymore as an actor and actress? Even, who knows? I'm not a lot of actors and actresses have been either. That's why a lot of them are that's why you see a lot of waiters that are like, I'm just waiting for my next big role. Just waiting for my next big part. All right. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I am Goose. This has been On With The Show. I will see you all on the other side.